Book One on all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. She is Australian poet, academic, and the author of the book The Grey Between. No other than Miss Nadine Ellis.
Daniel.
Welcome to Book 101, Miss Nadine. And can you please introduce more about yourself?
My name's Nadine, as you mentioned. I'm an Australian author, so I write poetry. I am a mother of four daughters. I'm also a radiographer by trade, and I am also a university academic. So there's a few things that I'm juggling, and I have a new book
Yes.
that's come out as well.
Okay, Miss Nadine Alice, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. And let's talk about the gray between.
So
What's yeah, sorry. Let's
yes,
talk
I
about
know.
your
Go for it.
yes. So let's talk about the gray between what subtle shift in decision making, like chronic risk aversion, analysis paralysis, or impulsive choices, signal burnout to get dismissed as strategic caution.
Do you want to sort of just restate all that for me? There was a lot in there.
Yes. So the gray the gray in between, can you tell us what inside this poetry book?
Okay, so I basically write for myself as a means of processing the experiences that I've experienced in life and the things that happened to me. So it's a lot of sort of autobiographical information. And I write about everyday life, motherhood, trauma that I've experienced, or people close to me have experienced, a lot of pain and suffering and sorrow. It's sort of, I've got a cat in the background just scratching away, so if there's extra noise, I apologise for that.
No
Um,
worries.
but it's just generally, I think it's just everyday life that we're all a part of and that we all experience. And the book itself is sort of like it spans about 30 years of my young life through to sort of more maturity and just how I coped with things that I sort of came across. So I've called it the grey between because it's really the difference between it's those things that are unsaid, the moments that we wish we'd vocalised but couldn't and did so later in life, or when we went home and the the, the dialogue runs in our minds. It's sort of those sort of moments, and I think for me, life is very much black and white, but I kind of try to sort of stay under the radar a bit and live in that sort of grey zone. And I think often a lot of us sort of want to sort of shelter in that area as well. So the book basically is my sort of documentation of that sort of experience, I guess.
Experience indeed. And Miss Nadine, can you read your favorite chapter of the book?
Oh, okay. There are quite a few in there. I think what resonates to a lot. I write a lot about post traumatic stress. Um, I sort of was in a really bad train crash when I was a 9-year-old child, and I
Yes.
think that sort of really has impacted upon my early years. And obviously, I think a lot of people probably would be um, privy to a bit of post traumatic stress in their own sort of way. So I think they'll be able to resonate with this one. This is called Not Looking for the Seeing. Even with my eyes shut, the white lightning turns on fluorescent tube wires across the black sky of closed lids. Thunder's lightning as bright as the tungsten lights I stared into in my photographic youth, fascinated by their strength to semi blindness now that I should wear glasses to see crispness, and walk without them when melancholy envelops me inside out. What is this storm of hate I carry? Is it the noise or what it represents I fear? This cacophony hitchcocks me back to that train wreck. Not the stop, but the 2 seconds after it all begins. The same 2 seconds after the lightning claps its colour, I count, a child again, counting distance, 3,000, 4,000. Whack, and I'm ricocheted against the metal walls. The blue emergency bulbs spring onto screams I do not register as the thunder of stones and pulverized wood thrum the window, past the glass into my head, vibrate my bones, the same bass tone that sings against my bedroom glass now.
Interesting, Miss Nadine. Interesting indeed. The gray between suggests moral ambiguity. What personal or societal tensions inspired this exploration of right versus wrong?
Oh, yeah, that's an interesting question. I think, and I think generally it's probably comes back down to my interpretation of how I perceive people treat me and how I perceive they see me. And I think it's kind of that fine balance between trying to sort of navigate myself, or I think just people in general trying to navigate their way through life and deal with people's actions upon them. And often I think it comes down to, I mean, we travel through life and we experience things, and those things that we experience make us who we are, but they shouldn't necessarily define us. So I think what defines us is how we then move through those experiences. And it's sort of getting from pain and suffering and trauma that people have experienced, and then sort of making like a conscious decision to be above that and to sort of not let those sort of occurrences shape who they are, but to sort of have that as something that they can then learn from. And I think learning about ourselves and about people is really vital. So for me, that's sort of the grey between. Again, it's sort of, it's not the black and the white, but it's those zones in between, and coming to terms with your life and understanding the way people act necessarily isn't against you. It's just a lot of the time we just rebound off of each other without really understanding why. I'm not sure if that's really given you the answer that you're after, but that's where it comes from for me.
Yes, indeed, Miss Nadine. Yes, indeed. How does the book challenge rigid definitions of justice, loyalty, and redemption?
Um, Sorry, could you just reword that?
How does the book challenge rigid definitions of justice, loyalty, or redemption?
I think it basically, when you read the poems, um, I feel there's probably a lot of me that sort of is splayed out open onto the page. So you get an understanding of things that have occurred and how I've not necessarily challenged them, but how I've moved through them and coped with it. And I think you can understand that there is pain and suffering experience. Hopefully, it's not too over dramatic. I just, it's just me sort of working these things out. And yes, I come across instances where there is injustice occurring, but these are things that happen to all of us, and it's a matter of, do you recognize it? Yes. Do you want to do something about it? Potentially. Do you attack it? Maybe not. Do you sort of retreat? Possibly. But it's all, at the end of the day, it's about sort of surviving through all those sort of instances and being comfortable with the decisions that you make moving forward.
Very well said, Miss Nadine. Very well said. What message do you want readers to take about living in the gray areas of life?
Hmm. I think for me, I think it's really important to be kind to yourself. I think a lot of us experience of pain and suffering or trauma, um, and often we're not sure whether we should be upset by it or sad. And I think it's fine to be sad and upset. That is perfectly acceptable emotions if something has happened to you or you've experienced something. And I think the important thing is to sort of have the mindset that you can move through that. You don't need to empower people to hurt you. And I think at the end of the day, it's making a conscious decision that there's always going to be pain and suffering out there, but it's up to us as individuals to sort of rise above that and say, well, I'm making a conscious decision to move through that. I'm going to be resilient. And I think the process is it's baby steps. It's sort of taking small steps, finding something that will bring you some joy and focusing on that. And it's getting from A to B. That moment in between often takes a bit of time, but we've got to find something to occupy ourselves with it. And I'm not sure if I've gone off on a tangent there. Sorry. Did
No
you want to
worries.
bring me back
You are
in?
in you are in the right track, Miss Nadine. Which characters or journey surprised you the most while writing The Gray Between?
I think it's just a realization for myself that I think as I write these things, I process them, and then I'm able to sort of move on, and I think it's just a sort of, like I said, a realization of a maturity over time, sort of being able to accept people for who they are, not necessarily condoning their actions against me or other people, but realizing that they are who they are. Sometimes they don't have the insight to sort of be able to understand their actions against other people. But I like to think that I can move through life being able to accept people. I realize when they're good for me and when they're not. And I sort of am at that stage in life now that I can excuse myself from bad relationships or bad interactions, and I can sort of see them now where I probably necessarily couldn't when I was younger. And again, the book itself sort of documents that in my way through the poetry. Yeah, and ultimately, for me, writing the book and being able to sort of get it out into the public is a way of connecting with other people as well, so that they too can see that they're not alone in their journeys, and that often the easiest way to get through these sort of awful times is to talk to other people, to share that sort of knowledge. And I think often what goes on in our head is worse than when we vocalize it.
Miss Nadine, as an Australian poet, academic, and author, what are your short-term and long-term goals?
Okay, so currently it's trying to sort of get the message out with the new book that we are not alone in life, and if we
Hmm.
can share our sort of hard moments, then often they're a little bit halved. I'm currently working on another manuscript, so that's sort of taking up a lot of my time as well. And it's just enjoying the whole writing process.
Good luck to your goals, Miss Nadine. And what would be your piece of advice for those people out there want to be a poet too, academic, an author too? What would be your
So if they want to be a poet, is that
yes,
what you're asking? Yeah, I
yes.
think there's so many people out there that use writing as a way to express themselves. And I think at the end of the day, I would encourage that. I mean, just write. Don't necessarily have to be writing for other people, but it's the enjoyment that you get or the ability to sort of offload or process things. So writing is the best. Just make that decision to sort of sit down and start doing it. If they want to go on and be more of a published writer, then I think doing courses is always vital. Some writing craft is very important. Find a mentor to help you. So there's lots of writing groups that someone can join, and just do it.
Just do it, people, and stop procrastinating. If you have the passion to write, and share to the world. And Miss Nadine, has anyone interpret the great theme in a way that shock or move you?
Um, sorry, are you saying like has someone sort of reacted in a way that I was surprised by?
Yes.
Yeah, I I
Yes.
I must admit a lot of people sort of um, have come up and they've sort of said, "Oh, I had to just sort of read this like one poem at a time because I think sometimes it can be a bit triggering for people." But the most moving thing I sort of was told was that actually a couple of people who read some of the poetry it actually brought them to tears, and as it was surprising, but it was kind of really touching as well. And I think it's just that sort of process of being able to connect with something that I've written that they have brought their own experiences too. So they sort of, those poems probably resonate a little bit more than they would for other people. But again, poetry is very much you do bring your own life to what you read. And that's where the emotion sort of really triggers.
Miss Nadine, what conversation do you hope readers have after finishing the book or your poetry?
I think it's probably about just being open with someone that they're close to and not being afraid to actually sort of express themselves. So I think once you read the book, I think you sort of I'm an open I'm an open book basically. You sort of see what my life has been about, and I think that sort of gives them permission to also feel okay about sharing what's happening with themselves as well.
Well, thank you so much for that empowering answer, Miss Nadine. And how does the story or your poetry reflect current societal debates about morality?
That's an interesting question. I haven't actually really thought about that. I'd probably have to think about that a bit and then get back to you on that one. But I think generally speaking, the themes that I talk about in the book cover a lot of what's going on in the world, like with um, trauma, abusive relationships, sort of, what would be another word, bullying, those sort of things that I've experienced growing up, and dysfunctional families. I think these are a regular sort of occurrences, unfortunately, in life. And yeah, I think
Yes.
that it brings it up. It's there.
What part of yourself or your experiences did pour into your poetry?
Oh, it's all about me. um, a lot of yeah. I, it, like I said, it sort of ranges like a good 30-year span. So it's like my teenage self, growing up being bullied as a child, going through to sort of being a teenager, being bullied again at school, sort of a very unpleasant home life, unfortunately, needing to leave home as a teenager, and then just generally trying to uh, land on my feet and eventually sort of getting into relationships that didn't often work. Um, Marriage, first time round, imploded terribly, and having children, sort of trying to sort of survive that. Luckily, a second marriage came along, lovely. But again, that sort of theme of being having to sort of go through awful moments to be able to appreciate the lovely moments in life. And I think if we don't have that struggle or that sadness or experience loss we don't seem to appreciate when good things are right in front of us. And I think that balance is important, um, as hard as it is at the time when we're going through it. But I think that sort of is reflected in the book as well.
Yes, very well said, Miss Nadine. Very well said. We need that balance, people.
Very much so. I think we really need to sort of wade through the mud and for that mud to stick a little bit. Yeah.
Miss Nadine, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and of course my book 101 review in fifth season too, comedy 101 second season, and food 101 in each fifth season as well, geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast law 101 and mental health 101, love letters in third season, movie 101 review and music 101 in fourth season, and science 101 and sex 101 in first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcasts. Miss Nadine, kindly complete this sentence. The gray between is ultimately a poetry about.
It's about trauma in everyday life. Yeah. It's yeah. It's life.
Indeed. Gray, the gray between Miss Nadine Ellis. Thank you so much for sharing your poetry to the world. So, can you please invite our listeners to support the gray between or your books or whatever projects that you are doing right now?
Oh, thank you, Daniel. Yes, well, the Grey Between is available through Amazon globally and Barnes and Noble as well. You can connect with me via my author website at nadineellis.com. So that's NADINEELLIS.com. And I'm on Instagram as well at Nadine Ellis Poetry. So it's all one word.
Yes, people, let's support Miss Nadine Ellis because if you support her, more and more and more empowering poetry to come, more and more empowering advocacy to come. So, Miss Nadine, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Daniel.
More to come, people. See you soon.